I'm Nick.
I'm Jill.
And we're Hipstrings. It is episode 16, February 4th, 2018.
And thank you for coming back or for checking us out for the first time.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about today?
My tiki mug, which might be completely blown out. Maybe Nick's is not blown out. Mine is an R2-D2. Nick's is Darth Vader.
Yeah. It's, it's funny. Everybody else in the U.S. right now is watching the Super Bowl, and we just don't care.
Yeah.
We really, really don't.
Well, we don't have cable. I don't think we could watch it if we wanted to.
There are ways, but we'd much rather be here with you. So you could watch the Super Bowl and then watch us later, which is our gift to you, I guess. So with that, why don't we talk about what we've been knitting? We're Twisted and Loopy.
So I've been having a lot of finished objects. Share some. This needs buttons, but has been washed and blocked. And this is my Victoria yoke pullover, which I showed before. So it
Smells clean.
It is a mix of hand spun as well as a mill spun. So the wonderful dyed fiber is a Polworth Tussle Flax blend from the Homestead Hobbyist from the Nintas Plantarum spin along we did together about 1.5 years ago. It's the Dickia colorway. And then this brown is Crioja, which I believe is a South American breed. Ken actually brings in an entire clip from a farm and gets it spun up. So you can find that at his website. And so I had talked before about this sweater with the fun of the gauge, but it all worked out in the end. The fit is beautiful on it. And so it's kind of a lesson in pay attention to your gauge while you're knitting and not just your swatch. Mm-hmm. Because things might change on you. But that you can recover. And if you decide to use yarns that have slightly different gauges, it's still, you can make it work. You might have to be a little bit clever to get it done, but
we should do a whole episode on knitting by the seat of your
pants, because that is what I like to do.
You should totally knit pants for that episode too, because that's a thing.
Both my failure to find commercial pants that I like.
I've pulled out and I'm working on a pair of socks. I believe I mentioned this once before.
If only we had sock blockers.
Yeah. Why don't you go grab one of those? I'll wait.
I don't have one in my size here.
Well, there you go. We can just laser cut one right now.
So.
This was the Reactor Design colorway. I think when we last talked about it.
sock, which is a Hipstrings.
Yep. When we last talked about it, I was just finishing up one sock. Mm-hmm. And now I'm on the second one. So it was originally had the goal of being a Christmas present, which I think is maybe going to turn into an attempt at a Valentine's Day present. But I might
birthday. I'm certain you can make it by my birthday.
I'll be definitely embarrassed if I can't do that. This is chugging along, and later on I'm going to talk a little bit about probably why I'm not further along than I should be. The second one, when you're not going directly from a pattern and you have to make modifications, it really helps if you make notes about those modifications rather than just refiguring it out the second time around. Because when I was making the second sock, I didn't put the right number of increases. I actually didn't put any increases when I got to this section, which requires a couple of increases. And I kept knitting, and the pattern wasn't lining up right. And I realized, oh crap, I need to rip back. and then I realized that the book actually has some, Knitting Vintage Socks, actually has some increases listed. So I did those increases and realized that's also the wrong number because I didn't make any notes. So I had to rip back again. And now I've gotten very comfortable with the idea of picking up stitches earlier in my project and then just ripping out the later stitches. There's something freeing about not being terrified of pulling out that needle and starting to pull in the yarn.
This is the pattern, the gentleman's sock.
All right, so with that, why don't you? What's your next next project?
So I finished a mitten. It's a Nik mitten. We can show. It is a Nik mitten. This is, I forget the name of the pattern. It's the free mitten pattern from Tin Can Knits. It comes in a couple different gauges, including worsted gauge, as well as. Are you gonna knit with mittens on?
I'm gonna try. It doesn't work.
And it goes from like newborn to adult. Nik has large hands, so it really fits all sizes.
And I'd always dismissed mittens as being, it's a kid's thing. And then for the past like 2 years, my fingers have just been cold. And I always find myself bringing my, when I'm wearing gloves, bringing my hands back into my glove. So I end up with, floppy fingers and warm actual fingers. And so I decided, you know what, it's time. I'm gonna just forget how it looks. I'm gonna go for mittens because then my fingers will actually be warm.
Yeah.
But I just discovered the fact that I can't knit with mittens. But it's not like I knit with gloves anyway. So.
The yarn is Naturally Nazareth from Kramer Yarns, which we carry in the studio. Also online at hipstrings.com. This is the wagon wheel color. And so they list it as a U.S. Merino wool blend. If you're thinking it's going to be like soft and snuggly like merino, it's not that. It's definitely a kind of higher micron count than most people think of, but it's sturdy. It would be great. It's great for mittens. It'd be good for hats, for sweaters.
It's a
little toothy.
Woolly. Toothy is a good word for it. It's at that limit of what I can stand and being on my hands. But if it was on my back or around my neck, I wouldn't like it so much.
But I find it very similar to kind of the Harrisville Designs yarns, their yarn that they have, which is it's a workhorse yarn. You know, we're talking like Cascade 220 kind of thing, but domestic made, and it's always good to support domestic makers whenever possible.
Yeah. So next up, I promised you this last time, and actually brought it. This is the scarf that I wove, and I can only take a moderate amount of credit for it. I went and I did the back and forth, and then
the weft.
What did you call that? The
hem
stitching. I did the hem stitching, and I placed the weft, and let's see how well it translates to video. It has this really nice
I think it's an
wavy
undulating twill.
There you go. Even if it's not an undulating twill, that sounds right.
It's a merino silk lace weight warp, and then a hand-spun BFL weft.
And as you can see, I was enjoying weaving, so it just kept going on and on and on. I could probably make like 2 scarves out of this. But I really like it. It's super soft, so I need to, as you can see, weave in the ends, if that's what it's called in weaving.
Yeah.
It's called weaving in the ends too? Makes more sense for weaving. And then I need to tie my ties for my tassels and cut them to the right length. But I've...
You wove a thing.
I wove a thing. It's a thing.
Which really, it was just supposed to be a learning exercise.
Yeah. it's so soft. It's so drapey. I didn't expect it to be quite so nice and drapey. And
And you were so worried that it wasn't.
I was, and you can. I don't know if you could see during the video. Let me see if I could find a section. When I was weaving, there was times where the kids would be like, "Oh, this is cool. I'm going to touch this and take all of these parts and squish them together." And so it. Now I'm getting tangled up with my knitting. There were sections where I was just thinking, "Oh, this looks terrible. It's going to be horrible. I'm not going to like it." As you can see, I'm having difficulty finding those sections. So obviously, it turned out pretty much okay. Well, okay. So here's a little bit of a part where you can see, the pattern doesn't quite stay regular, but it's hard to find, and especially if I'm wearing it. Nobody's going to notice that, right? Yeah. So, yeah, I think it turned out well. The one thing that I learned is that I much prefer the satisfaction of banging the what's that thing called?
Beater.
Banging the beater, beating the beater, rather than what I had to do with this, which was get
Gently
to
place it.
the right position and then come back. And then
so you'll
place
be
the
a
left.
rug weaver.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Well, that's the next.
That's the next project when we do
project.
the yoga mats.
Yes.
So that'll be cathartic. Yeah. So, but I wove a thing. The thing has been woven. I thank you very much for the for warping the loom. As you're warping a new loom, I can't understand. The patience it takes to get that done.
I like the process of warping and dressing a loom. Like, it's nice. It's repetitive. I'm getting more comfortable with it, so it's not as frustrating as it used to be. Also, so I became part of the Jane Stafford online guild last year, and I've continued my membership this year. And it's just been, I haven't even finished watching all the videos from last year, and it has been such a great resource for floor loom weaving. And the first year is all about like dressing your loom, winding a warp, simple design of projects, troubleshooting, that kind of stuff. And then this year is all about color and design. So really good resource if you are out there and interested in learning more about weaving or floor loom weaving specifically. I'm warping my David, which is my new loom, right now with a V-shaped, it's the Winter Sky V-shaped shawl from Handwoven. I'm kind of modifying it a little bit. I'm using a mix of some different lace weights I had in my stash and some hand spun for the warp. And I'm about halfway through threading the loom. So probably the next time we talk, I'll actually be weaving on it. And then I wonder
if we should set up the video at some point in time so people can see you weaving.
Yeah.
Because that won't be noisy.
This loom will be quieter than the last one.
Yeah?
Yeah, because it doesn't have metal heddles.
Oh, yeah. I completely associate the ka-chunk, ka-chunk of metal heddles rattling around with weaving, well, so this will be weird.
This one's much quieter.
This will be weird.
And then I'm working on my podcast socks, which are from Gobbist Yarns.
Those are specifically podcast socks now?
I don't knit on them because I usually have one of a kind projects. So I'll have like a sweater I'm working on, maybe a blanket, an accessory of some sort, and socks. Like, that's kind of my project setup. And right now I have 2 pairs of socks going on. So one gets left to the side.
Yeah.
Because everything is also physical location. Like, every project has a location in the house.
Well, there used to be the car knitting when the kids were in. When you had to pick up the kids. Yeah.
Yes. Then there would be a car sock.
Yeah.
But right now I've got 2 pairs of socks, and I'm more interested in getting this pair of socks done for Nick. So this is Regia, an Arn and Carlos colorway, and it's the same kind of pattern that I'm doing on the Gaba socks. I promise I'll write it up someday. It's basically a vanilla sock, but it has a little bit of ribbing at the sides that gives it just a little bit of extra stretch to make it easier to put on and hug your feet. And I just got to the knitting straight part. Nik has size 13 feet. I think I figured out at one point that knitting him socks is like knitting myself a sweater.
What?
It's about the same number of stitches.
No kidding.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
It takes me about the same amount of time.
Nice. Sweaters for my feet.
Yes.
So you mentioned the ribbing factor, and anytime I think about socks, I think about the scene in Down with Love when Ewan McGregor is showing off his brand new Lycra socks that don't fall down. And I'm just thinking, no, that can't have been a thing, because knit socks, you've got, I mean, look at this. This is this tiny little top part with this giant bottom part. This is clearly going to hold the sock up.
But machine-made socks?
Can't you do the same thing with machine-made socks? I don't know. We have to get a machine.
Well, yeah, there's like wool socks that are perfectly fine.
Yeah. So it's just
ribbing.
It's just the very, very small
probably
threading.
The dress socks.
Yeah. Okay.
Just didn't hold themselves up.
Yeah.
Or nylon wouldn't have held itself up.
But in that time period, they wouldn't have had nylon.
They had nylon. Nylon was World War II. Okay.
Anyways, that's a complete aside. Sorry.
So.
Is that everything?
That's everything.
Hey, I'm not that far behind you. I'll at least have these socks hopefully done by next time.
My days have been filled with making beautiful things for all the lovely people out there.
You have a couple of FOs that you've already given away. That you.
Yeah.
Did you take pictures of them?
No. No, I took a picture of the one I gave to Sam.
Okay.
So I've been trying to say thank you to the people who have been helping me with Hipstrings over the last couple of years in the best way I know possible, which is to give them hand knits, because they're all knitters themselves. And there's nothing better than giving a hand knit to another knitter. You will never receive the same amount of appreciation than giving it to a non-knitter.
They actually know how much time and effort it takes.
Yeah. So I finished a crochet scarf. I'll try to get the photo to Nik so he can show it. It was Manx Lawton dyed by the Homestead Hobbyist in his Minnie's Taffy colorway, which is normally really, really bright. But on Manx, which is a cinnamon color, it becomes this beautiful jewel toned. I gave that to her. And then I also, and I didn't photograph, a Rique hat in some hand-spun Falkland singles dyed by the Homestead Hobbyist in his Pond Scum colorway. I gave that to my friend Christiana, who was one of my first helpers in the studio.
So there is one other gift FO that you didn't talk about, which is the one you've been splashing all over social media today.
I was about to talk about what we're wearing.
Segue, I guess. Yes.
So I did want to mention, since we're both wearing hand knits, what we're wearing and what they are. So another FO I finished was Adrian's Imagination sweater in handspun rambouillet. It matches Nik's sweater that he's wearing right now. And here's a photo. And so Nik's sweater is the brownstone pattern by Jared Flood. Adrian's sweater was the Imagination sweater by Kate Oates. And they look so adorable together.
It fits Adrian perfectly, and he really liked it. And it was funny. So it's Sunday, and we came up, and I had finished doing something, and I go to Adrian, and I call him down from his room, and I say, "Okay, Adrian, I need you for 10 minutes." He's like, "What?" I said, "Put the sweater on. We're going to go take a photo." And he was perfectly happy to do it. I mean, he was off playing
Yeah.
with his sister, and yep, nope, okay, I'm gonna put it on, gonna go out, take a photo with you, and it was we were outside in the snow and perfectly warm
Yeah.
because hand knits are awesome. Um,
And I have to say, like, you've had that sweater for about a year now, I think.
yeah, yeah, at least.
It's a 3-ply Rambouillet, and I have to say it has held up better than any of my other hand-spun sweaters. I don't think you've had to depill at all.
Nope.
It has the slightest,
Could probably use a little bit now,
yeah,
but
it has the slightest, like, soft halo, but it is beautiful, and so Rambouillet, definitely a good sweater yarn.
yeah.
And then I'm wearing my Crazy Heart in Bowie DK, which I am just trying to find the time to frog because it is a bit too big, and I would love it more if it was a size smaller. So
You're having
I'm going to rip it so I can enjoy knitting it once again.
So you're documenting it today so that you can
Yes,
go back to it
because it will be no more.
Yeah, and I mean maybe that's a pretty good segue into the next segment of pro tips.
Yeah.
Right? The whole idea of don't be afraid to rip back
And
fix mistakes, right? On the one hand, you know, it's very commonly said, I'm not, or I saw somebody talking about this on Reddit of, I'm not making a beauty pageant piece, so they're just going to, you know, go through the mistakes. But on the flip side,
but if you have a finished object and there's something that's bothering you about it,
you're always going to see it. Nobody else will see it. Sure, nobody else will see it, but you will see it, and it'll
it's
bother
something
you.
that's keeping you from enjoying that. Like, I know I will love this sweater if it was a size smaller, and I'm not happy with it at the size it is now. Unfortunately, Bowie DK is an awesome yarn, and I know that when I rip it back and reknit it, it'll be perfectly fine.
So, I need a spare needle to show off one of the things I was going to do here. So I'm going to finish this needle.
Have a needle.
Or I could do that. So I don't know if this is going to be even possible for me to show with this camera, but hell, let's go for it. The thing I wanted to show off was talking about how do we say, oh crap, I made a huge mistake. I forgot the number of, to add the right number of stitches. Well, maybe I should say the first thing is a couple of rows before you knit when you should have purled, or purled when you should have knit. That is super easy, especially if you've got a crochet hook nearby. And there's a bunch of tutorials online about this. Maybe we can, one of these days we're going to start doing our own tutorials, but I encourage you to check out some of the other tutorials in the meantime. But seriously, keep knitting around to the spot where you made that mistake, and then just drop the stitch. Seriously, drop it. And it's terrifying. But you're able to drop it down as many rows as you need to pick that back up. And then you use a crochet hook if you've got it, or you can even use needles. I've done it once with a crochet hook and it was infinitely easier. But all the other times I've done it with needles. And you walk the ladder back up going either knit or purl, depending on what you're trying to do. You just got to make sure you don't drop it all the way down and lose the darn thing. But then you've got situations where you tried to add, or where you're supposed to add stitches or do a decrease, and there's no hope. You can't fix that just by dropping a stitch further down. So you have to pick up, and a lot of people get stressed out about this because when you see an individual stitch, you don't know which part of the V to go into and when you're going around and all that stuff. So let's see how close I can get to the camera here. Oh, I got to change the focus. There we go. All right. So it doesn't matter if I go in this part of the V or that part of the V. What's actually going to happen is what matters is how you respond when you're knitting that row. So pick a side and just make sure you pick up that one side and I can't do it while looking at the camera, so I'm going to do it here. And then you skip the other half, and then you pick up from the next stitch, and you pick up from the next stitch, right? And so you're going to keep going through like this, and you're going to end up with what looks like, you know, stitches on your needle. You go through that all the way around. And the important thing to realize is that at the beginning of the row, you're going to have a little bit of a jog. And when I first started doing that, I got a little bit confused because I was going this way, this way, this way, this way, and then all of a sudden, when I came back around, the stitch that I was picking up was, you know, a little bit lower. Well, of course, because you're knitting in the round and you're actually making a spiral, so it makes sense. So once you picked up everything around, then you can pull out all of your needles and just start ripping back and ripping back. And it's terrifying, but it's a very satisfying experience. And what's going to happen is once you get to the end, it'll stop. What I had my experience here, actually, I had to, I probably got up to this point, and then I had to rip back all the way to here, twice. Let me focus on Jill again. And the thing that was weird was that there are these a whole line of pearls, and the pearls actually caught the opposite side of the needle because it's, you know, knitting the opposite way, and so it really confused me at first. But making sure you have proper yarn management on the loose end helped out a little bit, and you can't see any difference right around here. You know, there's no difference. And I've done this twice now on this sock. So it's okay. I could have just said, oh, hell, you know, the pattern's not matching up right. It's about the right size. It should be okay. But I knew it would always bug me every time I looked at Jill's feet. And Jill, being a knitter, would know very well that something was not right. So, and it might have affected the fit, too. So I didn't want to risk that, especially on something that I was going to be a gift. So the second part, or third part, or fourth part, I'm not sure how many parts I'm at right now. The other part I wanted to mention, though, is I said it didn't matter which part of that V you grab. What matters is when you stitch, or when you're knitting. Everybody's worried about twisting their stitches. And I've got one secret for you, one special trick, right? There's our clickbait title. The secret that makes it so that you either always or never twist a stitch, depending on what you want. Because sometimes you do want to twist stitches, but that's for another show. If you look at your knitting and you see a loop, it looks like a person running, if you think about it. You've got your loop coming up, right? And there is a leg that's in the front of your knitting, reading from left to right, right? You've got your yarn coming in from this side. This is what you're going to bring in. And then you've got these running feet. You always want to catch the front foot. So whether or not it's this way or this way, you want to catch the front foot. And that will make sure that with how your yarn is laying with the rest of your fabric, it'll make sure that you don't twist the stitch. So again, let's see how well this will work out. Focus again here. And manage my yarn like so. All right, so if I'm looking at this yarn, you can see here that this leg is ever so slightly further forward. So that's the one I'm going to grab. But then, let me go back and I'm going to put the stitch on backwards. So now, of course, it's not quite so obvious from this side, right? Now, the front of the next stitch over, this is how it was before. This is the one that's sort of running forward. Yeah. This is the one that's sort of running forward. But here you can see the stitch, the back is sort of running forward. And that's because I twisted that stitch on purpose for the demonstration. So that's the part that I want to grab and then knit through there. You have anything else you want to add? Or
No, you're good.
we're going to have to see if that actually looks decent on the video. And if it doesn't, one, I apologize. And two, like I said, there's lots of videos online about picking up stitches. I don't know if there's anything about the running person stitch, but take a look yourself. That was one piece of advice I got. I can't remember where I got it from. Really wish I could give credit for it. I didn't come up with it. So yeah.
Yep.
And that was our pro tip for the week.
So the hand spun make along is still going through. That lasts through March.
That's not in the studio, right? That's
no, it's just a general Hipstrings thing. Yeah, make along. There's good discussion in the Ravelry group for Hipstrings for the hand spun make along, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm going to cast on next because I'm feeling at a loss. But I've been working on adding more yarn to the border of my hand spun blanket. But I'm about to run out of yarn again, and I'll have to spin up another 12 ounces before
you finish
I get
that
to finish
thing.
that blanket.
You finished that thing 3 times.
I will in the end, because I keep on finding fiber to spin up to add to it. If you're going to make a giant hand spun blanket, you might as well make it as giant as possible. So as soon as I finish that up, I'm going to cast on something else, and I'm undecided whether or not I have a combo spin. I can't reach. The yarn is on the table. Maybe Nick. This is the beginning of it. Nick, there's more.
I didn't know you wanted all of them.
And more.
Yeah, you don't have enough hand to hold all of these. There's very Mardi Gras colors.
It's like deep blues and purples with like the bright yellow, I guess.
Have you not seen Mardi Gras?
I'm actually probably going to edit the yarn so it is not so yellow.
Yeah.
Yeah, like this skein that is very yellow, I'm probably going to edit that part out. This is destined to be another sweater for Nick because it has blues that I can't wear. So I will suffer to make you the sweater and then it's yours.
Wow. Why don't you just make me knit it?
Because I want you to have it sooner rather than later.
Oh, I'm not sure how to take that statement.
Or I have some yarn for a handspun viajante, which is a Martina Bem pattern, which I've made one before, but that one got shrunk in the wash too. And I really like it, and I want to make some adjustments to it and make a new one for myself. So I'll be casting on either one of those more handspun. But that's what's going on. And hopefully you have the courage to cast on your own handspun project.
I did do my own handspun once. Is that that baby sweater?
Yes. And does T-Rex.
Oh yeah, I was just doing a little scarf. I wonder what happened to that.
It's somewhere.
It's somewhere.
I know where I've seen it lately.
Yeah. I do need to finish plying that. Yeah, that's what I'll do. So I'm sure I've got something to talk about. Maybe you can help me find it.
Yeah,
okay.
I can help you find it.
All right. It's been a while since I've touched a spinning wheel.
Yeah, because you've been knitting.
Yeah.
It's the knitting time of year for you.
Well, not only that, but it's a lot harder to travel and spin. I'm traveling a lot for work these days, so.
So then in the studio, I forget if we talked about this last time, but I'm starting to offer workshops in the studio. The first one is coming up next weekend on February 11th. It's my Will It Blend workshop. We will be talking about basic philosophy behind blending fibers, and then also working on getting to know the equipment to blend fibers, and we'll probably be focused on hand cards, drum carder, and blending board, so more of the carding side of things rather than a comb set of things. So that class is filling up. You can sign up online for it. I'm also doing an intro to acid dyeing in March, on March 4th, and you'll get to dye either a skein of yarn or some fiber and get an intro to acid dyes. I'm setting up a little dye studio in my commercial studio space so that people can come in and use my space to dye instead of having to make a mess of their own. And then we'll have Friday Night Craft this Friday on February 9th from 6 to 9 p.m. So if you are local to the Pittsburgh area, we would love to see you in the studio sometime soon. And I'll be putting more workshops on the calendar as I figure out show schedule, because I'll do workshops when I don't have shows. We do have a number of shows this spring. We will be at the For Love of Fiber Festival in State College, Pennsylvania on March 17th. Then we will be at Indie Knit and Spin on March 24th. And then we will be at the Allentown Fiber Festival April 14th through 15th. So all throughout the state of Pennsylvania, you don't have an excuse to not come to a fiber festival where we will be this spring.
No excuse whatsoever. Yeah. Unless you're out by Philadelphia.
Allentown's not that far from
That's
Philadelphia.
True. That's true.
So For the Love of Fiber and Allentown are both new festivals for us. So we're hoping to meet some new faces.
Yeah.
And we can't wait to meet you.
And that's really the main reason we do festivals. We love meeting people. Selling yarn fiber is a bonus, but really we love having some time to hang out with everyone and geek out about yarn and fiber.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Indie Knit and Spin. We have the vendors selected. We are not announcing them yet because we want to wait until people actually pay. I
have been announcing them on the Facebook page once they have paid.
So if you want to get more up-to-date information and you're curious if your favorite vendor has paid, then go ahead and check out the Facebook page.
And we'll start doing vendor profiles on the website.
Yep.
The Indie Knit and Spin blog.
Yeah.
So there's lots of stuff coming into the studio these days. We just got 4 new colors of buoy fingering, which is our actual buoy fiber that's dyed in the wool and then blended, spun into yarn, and I have fiber on order to get a lot more of those colors in this spring. We have some new blends that I'm working on sampling that'll be in the shop soon, as well as getting some favorites that have been out of stock will be back in stock. I got a wool shipment last week, and I will get a wool shipment this week. And I'm getting weaving yarn shipment this week. And I also should be getting the Jaeger spun yarns in the studio soon. So lots of new stuff. So much exciting things going on with Hipstrings right now. And it has been an absolute pleasure to see everybody on Instagram and Facebook working with Hipstrings fiber and yarn. It brings a smile to my face every single time I see it.
The main reason we do this is to geek out with all of you.
Yeah.
So, I think that's it.
Yeah. Thank you for joining us yet again, and we hope to see you again soon.
All right. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.
Bye.
you.